I got like a podcast microphone thingy.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah, it's like
You're like all official now.
I know.
You are now entering preFORM. Prepare to perform. A podcast created to explore the inner workings of high-profile performers. Conversations reveal what separates them from the average human. Buckle up. Kristin Allen is a two-time world champion in acrobatic gymnastics and member of the USA Gymnastics Hall of Fame. In 2009, Kristin won the USA's first World Games gold medal in acrobatic gymnastics. In 2010, she proved to be the best in the world, taking the gold medal at the World Championships. Following retirement from athletics, Kristin went on to perform with Cirque du Soleil, toured with the 2012 Olympic team, and taught celebrities gymnastics on BBC. She is a keynote speaker and has taught performance workshops for Lululemon, USA Gymnastics, and Red Bull's high performance program. She is currently a board member of the National Gymnastics Foundation and president of the Acrobatic Gymnastics Foundation, which has provided over $55,000 to athletes in need. In addition to her work with gymnastics, she invests in and advises startups centered around health and human performance. In 2020, she graduated with a BS from the USC Marshall School of Business and an MSL in Business Law and Compliance from the USC Gould School of Law. Needless to say, I'm thankful for the opportunity to showcase Kristin's career as an elite athlete and high-profile performer. Enjoy the show. All right, so let's start with your roots to provide my audience with some context, right? Your accolades, your career, what you've done as an elite athlete is remarkable to say the least. But where did this all start for you?
First of all, thank you. I appreciate that. So it started off in a little town called Livermore, California. That's where I first got involved with the sport of acrobatic gymnastics, which is what I sort of dedicated my childhood to. And yeah, I had a friend in elementary school who did the sport, and I'd taken some classes at the gym and I saw what they were doing, and it just looked so interesting and exciting. For those of you out there who don't know what acrobatic gymnastics is, it's a lot like pair figure skating. So I had a male partner, and there'd be tosses and catches, and also dance choreography that would go along with it. So very, very similar to what you'd see in pair-figure skating, but on a gymnastics floor. And we are an official discipline of gymnastics. We're under the USA Gymnastics Federation and International Gymnastics Federation. So we compete in the World Championships and the World Games. We are not yet an Olympic sport, however. So just to kind of give you some context on what it is that I actually did. So I saw these people in the gym just doing these crazy flips and being caught. And it just looked like so much more fun than the little tumbling classes that I'd done solo. And so I begged my parents to let me try it. And they really, you had to commit to a full year. And I was 7 or 8 years old. So it was sort of a big commitment, a big time commitment as well. And I was, my parents, I think, wanted me to have more range, which I appreciate that they wanted that for me now. But I was just sort of dead set on doing this one sport. And so I convinced them. It took me, I think, 2 years to convince them to let me join. So my first year I was 9, and And I just wanted to prove to them that they should let me stay in the
Wow.
competitive team. So the first year I worked really hard, and I was obviously terrible, but but as you are when you first start anything. But I just had, conviction.
Mm,
But I was definitely not the most talented athlete. So that's sort of how I got involved with the sport. Livermore, California has one of the top teams in the country. So,
mm.
also a product of my environment. I happened to grow up in a hometown that had a really successful team.
So as you're learning this sport and getting more and more skilled as the years went on, what made you feel like you were ready to get into that Team USA level? What pushed you into that? Was it a parental influence? Was it coach driven? Did you just eventually have the urge to compete at the highest level? Teammates, what was going on with that next level?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, when you're in a gym with other athletes who are at a higher level than you have people to look up to and sort of see what's possible. And I was lucky enough to have that in my gym. And so I sort of saw what the people above me were doing, and I wanted to do what they were doing. But I would definitely say I did not have parents who pushed me in that way, which I feel really grateful for. They're very supportive, but never overbearing in that
Mm,
way. I was very allowed to be very self driven, and so yeah, I honestly don't know exactly what changed. I just remember at a certain point, I I think I had the chance to meet the world champions that had won. They were the first Americans to win the world championships a few years
whoa.
before us, and I'm pretty sure that I'd kind of gotten to know them, and so I just decided one day. I want to say I was around 11, that I wanted to win the world championships. I obviously had no idea what that meant and what
Right.
it would look like, but I just decided, I think, that's what I want to go for. I want to be the best in the world at this sport. And so I just started working towards that. And I remember talking to had a choreography session, I think, with the former world champions, and I remember him telling me that he used to sign his journal every day, future world champion. And so I actually ended up doing something a little different. I wrote goals every night. I had these little tiny notebooks that I loved, and I would, because I didn't want to write too many things down, so I used these little notebooks. And every night I would write, um, "I will be a world champion" at the top of the list, and then
Mm,
I would write other goals that were maybe smaller, like a trick that I wanted to do, or something I wanted to get better at, or even school related goals, or personality related goals, like I'm gonna be more outgoing or something, and I would put
mm.
all those goals on and read them in the morning, and then every night write them. And I did that for probably 10 years. um, and so that was sort of my way of taking what he did, and just really keeping that goal top of mind.
Wow. So this is 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. You're starting to develop this momentum. What is separating you from your peers? Is it the tricks? Is it your physical nature, your physicality, your strength? What is going on that you can start to tell, hey, this dream that I'm putting into practice is beginning to come into fruition?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I definitely had a lot of positive reinforcement along the way. I had people kind of, who'd come up to me and say, "Hey, you're a great performer," or um, "We loved watching you out there," or "I think you have potential." And I think I do remember, like, the previous world champions telling me that also at some point, like, you really have potential in this.
Hmm.
And so I think I definitely had that sort of external reinforcement along the way. Um, but I, gosh, that's a great question. I don't know. I sort of looked at it. I always felt like I was a little bit different from everybody else, that I wanted it more. And I sort of knew that I was willing to do whatever it took to be the best. And we can dig into this a little bit later. I don't know if that's the best mindset to have,
Mhm.
especially as a young person, but it's the mindset that I had at the time. I one thing that I did that I think was helpful for me in my career, but maybe normalized things that shouldn't have been normalized. But one of the things that I did was, I think I was probably 12 or 13, and we had a library that was just like a couple of blocks away. And I would walk to the library, and I basically read the entire autobiography section of athletes. So I read everyone's, and especially all of the gymnasts. I read Dominique Moschino, Carrie Strug. I read one of the best books that I read was called The Second Mark, and it was about three the three figure skating pairs that made it to the 2000 Olympics in Sydney. And there was a scandal that happened, but it followed their lives from the time they got into the sport all the way through their Olympic journey, the top three pairs. And since I was in this paired sport, it described all of their struggles with their partners and with training and their whole journey. And so because at the time no one else on my team was sort of pursuing the same goals that I was, I didn't have that sense of community kind of reinforcing that, what was happening in my life was okay, and the difficulties were okay. And so I found that through books. I would just read about other athletes and their struggles, and sort of put things into perspective for me. Okay, like this is happening to me. Well, that's okay, because it's something that was happening to these other athletes. And
What's
I
definitely
remember,
That's not normal. Like, it's not normal for a 12, 13-year-old to go down to the library. And I mean, you were essentially using that as a therapeutic modality because you didn't feel the other people a part of that program were even at your level. I mean, to think about how young you were and you were still had the awareness and forthright to get into something like reading as a way to understand why you felt so different. I mean, that's such a unique. I don't know. I'll have to marinate on that one for a while.
well, thank you. I mean, I'd been reading a lot since I was a little kid. It was one of the first things I did. So I think it was always therapeutic for me to read. It's my little escape.
Mhm.
But then I also have, and this has continued over the years, I think it's just a great way of getting more information about something. And I think that I'm pretty sure my dad said this to me at some point, but to when you have a goal, you should learn about the people and what they
Mm.
did to achieve their goals that were similar. And so that was sort of the mentality that I had, was like, read about the people that you are inspired by and what they did. Um, and we can kind of segue into this at some point, but I think looking back on that, it also maybe normalized things that weren't okay. And um, I think there's a level of sort of psychological and physical um, abuse is a strong word, but I think, in some ways it's appropriate, where, at those top levels of training, you're just subjecting yourself to intense criticism, intense feedback, and then also just intense physical training.
Mhm.
And I think in gymnastics, that's, you know, um, it's not necessarily always been based in science. It's just sort of been based in, you have to just work harder and longer than everyone else.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that I'd read about, the crazy diets and crazy experiences with coaches. And so I just thought, okay, well, that's what happened to these girls. And that this is what made them Olympic gold medalists. So
Mhm.
that must be what I need to do too. Um, and so, uh, yeah, I think that pros and cons, right? Um,
Sure, sure.
yeah.
I mean, how did you handle? some of that mind, body, spirit, to use that word again. You said abuse is strong, but how did you digest that at such a young age as you were developing yourself as an elite athlete with that goal in mind of becoming a world champion?
Yeah, I'm not sure I did, to be honest. I think I
Mm,
was really great at, they call it emotional regulation, which is, keeping your mind in sort of a certain place and sort of being able to control your emotions to serve what you need to be doing.
mhm,
And that works great when you're, in a high pressure environment, like right before a competition, and maybe something happens, and that's not ideal, and you can kind of keep your head in the game and stay focused on the goal and stay calm, um, in order to perform the way you want to perform. But I think that can also transition to other parts of your life. And so I was sort of so good at, controlling my mindset and, um, almost dissociating, like just something bad was happening, so I could just kind of go somewhere else
mhm.
and be in some other little world. And like I said, that can be useful, but I think you can also overuse some of those tools to the point where it can be detrimental, where you don't actually know how to feel your feelings. And so some of those things I've definitely had to work through post sport. And I think that there's a lot more awareness now around these issues. And so
Right.
I definitely have hope for, future generations of athletes that, they hopefully won't necessarily have, um, those same things, and they'll have more support. We didn't know a lot at the time about the effects of sort of that mental trauma and emotional trauma. So, I think that future athletes, there will hopefully be more support for them.
So you mentioned once you retired, these were things you needed to work through. But let's take a quick step back because arguably more importantly, as you're alluding to, athletes need to start to develop a skill set of processing what's happening prior to retirement, meaning while they're still training and competing. Were you aware of this happening? Were you aware of that disassociation, or is this all in hindsight, in retrospect?
Yeah, I would say this is all in hindsight. In the moment, I was a teenager, and
Right.
I only wanted one thing in life, and that was to be the world champion. That's all I wanted. So
Mhm.
that's what I kind of just put everything into every day.
So, spoiler alert for the audience, right? You were able to achieve your goal and become a Hall of Fame athlete at that level. It's not something to just say, oh, you did it, check the box, move on. I mean, once you achieve that goal that you set at such an early age, did you feel 100% fulfilled as you may have thought you would? Or was there still something missing, some sort of void within that spectrum of being an elite athlete?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, I remember standing on the podium when I won the world championships, and it is an incredible feeling. And you sort of have this like flashback of all of these memories and everything that it took to get there, um, which is incredibly powerful in itself. But it's also bittersweet because I do think that, you know, driving every day for something for so long, um, especially as a child, I dedicated my entire childhood to this one goal. Um, you sort of don't know what to wake up for next.
Mm,
You've just poured everything. It's, your passion and, brain power and everything into this one sport, and this one goal. And after you've accomplished it, there is that sense of loss and this void of, I don't know what I'm going to do with my time anymore.
mm,
Um, and I think that you hear that a lot when you start talking to people who have driven towards something for a long time, and they sort of feel like it's sort of this sense of like, I'll be happy when this happens.
Right.
And no one ever is, right? I remember going to a concert and the lead musician was talking about this. I thought I'd be happy when I was touring in front of, hundreds of thousands of people. But I'm not any more fulfilled or content doing this now than I was before. And so I think that I don't think it says, don't pursue goals and don't pursue big dreams. I think it just means that um, it's important to know your why. Are you doing this because you just want the title? I just want to be the best in the world at something. It doesn't matter what it is. Or I just want to be a, Grammy winning musician, or I just want to be a CEO. Or are you really motivated by the love of the craft and by the whatever it is, its capacity to give back and create change. And I think that it really does depend on your motivation, and having your motivation be at a deeper level than just the title, I think allows you to create that happiness along the way and feel fulfilled and content, because then really, the pursuit of the goal is still powerful, but the outcome doesn't define who you are, and the outcome doesn't um, define your happiness.
Well, you're here dropping knowledge bombs on all of us today. I appreciate your feedback and your honesty within that answer. At what point did you feel like your identity was ready to be shifted away from this is me as a world champion gymnast? This is it. This is Kristin Allen, comma, and you fill in the accolade, right? I mean, you were so young at this time when you're standing on the stage,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of what you're sharing with us is in hindsight, but still, when did you start to feel that transition where you're thinking to yourself, there's more to life than just this podium, just this title, just these accolades?
Yeah, I actually think it first started about 6 months before my last World Championships. Um,
Wow.
and just in a very kind of subtle way, I felt so much pressure. I'd won the World Games in 2009 um, when I was 17. And so we were the reigning champions basically going into um, the World Championships in 2010. And so there was just a ton of pressure. The training was incredibly difficult. I was pretty much miserable most of the
Mm,
time, just sore and burnt out and tired. Um, and, I think I just felt like I couldn't I think it started to dawn on me like, wow, I've had this goal from before I even, I don't even know why I want this goal anymore. I just know I've wanted for as long as I can remember.
mhm,
And here I am putting myself through the ringer every day. Um, and, I don't know if this is worth it. Here I am. And this is my whole identity. And what if I've been writing this in my little notebooks for 10
mm,
years that I will do this. I'll be the world champion. Um, and what if I fail?
mm,
And it was just sort of like, gosh, everything I've built my life on could be sort of taken out from under me.
mhm,
And so I think that's when I realized, okay, well, if I hinge my whole identity on the outcome of this goal, I'm going to be a failure if I don't make it. And so I think I had to kind of separate those things then in order to even get there
mhm,
and compete and do my best. And I remember I started writing to myself a lot. And I would say, the important thing is that you're showing up every day and you're here, and you're doing this. and you're doing the best you can, and the outcome doesn't define you. This is what you do, it's not who you are.
Hmm.
And I just kept saying that to myself. And it was what I needed, I think, just to even be able to go out there and compete in my last world championships. I needed to kind of know that no matter what happened, my sort of the previous 10 years hadn't been for nothing. Um, and so it was just too much pressure. So that's when I really started thinking about it at first. And that's what sort of started the process. But then I went on and I made a career out of being an athlete. I performed with Cirque du Soleil and did stunts for Broadway, and I taught celebrities gymnastics. And so it was still very much part of my identity. And so really that didn't change until I ended up getting hurt in 2014, and realized that I couldn't be an athlete anymore and I couldn't make that my career. So I had to really think about who I wanted to be, and sort of really dig into all of that on a much deeper level.
I know on the pre-call you shared part of that injury with me, and how it happened, not in obviously gross detail, but some of the procedures you had to go through, and lying in bed, and like you just said, thinking about who you are and what you want to be after the fact. Do you think if there wasn't an event like an injury that took place, you would have found that soul searching time? Or would you have just continued to be, like you said, miserable, just going through the motions in search of, or in aim for another world championship?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I finished competing in 2010. I retired after that World Championships, and then went on to have this career. And I would say in the career part of it, I was having such a great time. I loved performing. I really enjoyed that experience. It was sort of the fun part of sport. Um, get to do all your most fun tricks and perform for people, and you're not judged, which is amazing. So, so I loved that part of my career. I also loved, getting to teach people and just sort of explore different aspects of my sport. Um, so I can't say I was miserable that whole time.
Mhm.
I was definitely miserable at the end while I was competing, but I wouldn't be doing it justice if I said that part of my career wasn't fun. When some people get to have really wonderful long careers, and some don't. Some end like mine at 23, and so it's sort of, I feel lucky in some ways that it happened when it did, because it gave me a chance to really kind of reinvent myself and figure out, and give me the time to kind of explore and figure out what I wanted to do next.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm trying to remember if I answered your full question.
Oh,
Oh,
definitely.
I guess it did. I guess to give the audience some context, my injury required me to have about 17 surgeries. And so I was in bed for about 6 months, because the surgeries were back to back. So I was spent a long time. I'm not fully in bed, but just, very, very limited mobility and ability to leave the house. So, yeah, I think that having that time to just really reassess my life definitely gave me a chance to do that soul searching that I think would have taken me much longer. Um, I think it probably still would have had to happen, because that transition has to happen, but it would have taken a lot longer than it did. Um, but it's not like it kind of all just happened and then it's over. I think it's a work in progress, and something I still think about now.
As is healing, right? I mean, it's a life's work to heal from all of the main injuries you've had, but the micro injuries that your body sustained, that your mind, your heart, all of that mind, body, spirit, you were digesting that for so long. And it takes a long time to unpack that and unravel everything that happened for you. So, where are you going now? What is your next 10-year window looking like? Are you writing in that journal? Are you setting those intentions? What do those little lines say about Kristin now?
That's a great question. Um, I think in some ways, one of the best things that I got to do was to sort of, I got to go to school. And so after I finished my surgeries, I went to school for 5 years, and got to kind of explore, rather than leading with my accomplishments, leading with my personality and my character and my values, and connecting with people based on that, and not based on accomplishments. And so I think that was a great challenge and learning experience for me to kind of develop myself beyond that, because I had such an isolating childhood. So
Hmm.
it gave me that chance to kind of explore and figure out who I was, and find new passions. And I found that, actually, in the business world of all places. I went to school for business. And I think that a big part of what I kind of figured out was what I said earlier about it pursuing something being more than just a goal or a title, and having it be something that you feel is meaningful to you, in the day to day. And for me, that's finding something that can make it an impact, create systemic change.
In regards to that systemic change, what is your next world championship looking like? What would be the pinnacle of that window of time where you're going to work to develop yourself outside of physical and mental and emotional abuse? It's now your time. There's not anybody constructively telling you right or wrong. It's your journey. It's your opportunity. But what will be that world championship moment for you?
That's a great question. I don't know if there is one. I think that at this point, for me, it's really about, um, nurturing the relationships in my life. It's about building community. It's about, finding, building my, skill base so that I can, and knowledge so that I can understand the world better, and, how things connect so that I can, um, hopefully be, in service of creating change, that is truly impactful, and not just, something that maybe I just think we need. It's something that, um, that can, like I said, systemic change that can really help on a deeper level. I think that we've learned a lot about that over the last year with COVID, and, with George Floyd, and sort of that there are these deeper constructed systems in place. And I don't, I can't say I know enough about it, about how all of these things work together, to know how I can change them yet.
Hmm.
I'm just doing my best to learn as much as I can, to hopefully be able to do that at some point. And I think that what I'm doing now, has the potential to be able to create that kind of change. That's my hope.
Well, if anybody is right for the job, I think you are definitely where you're supposed to be. I mean, looking at your career and what you've done as an elite athlete, going back to school and transitioning those skill sets into something now where you're ready to disrupt the universe in a positive way and make a lasting impact is a huge, it's a tall order, but I think, if anyone has that drive, it is someone like you that has built those types of skill sets along the way. So I look forward to it selfishly and personally to see what you've got going on. I know my listeners will enjoy following your journey. Where can we follow along? Where can we be a part of this journey of Kristin Allen?
I have a nonprofit foundation called the Acrobatic Gymnastics Foundation, and we give grants to kids with financial need in order to compete in train in our sport. And we do that purely based on financial need. It could be any level of experience. We just want to give kids the opportunity to be involved. And so my foundation website is iheartacro.org.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's a great place to follow along as well with the work we're
Perfect.
doing there. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining preFORM. I really do appreciate it. I'll make sure to link everything in the show notes so everybody can follow along and gain more access and to have a bigger understanding as to the impact that you have now on our planet.
Thank you.
So, Kristen, we know where you have come from and we know what you've done as of late, but what are you doing right now and where is this headed towards in the future?
Sure. Yeah. So I graduated from USC. I'm a proud children. Um, with my degree in business, and then also did a master's in business law. And during that time, I started working with startups. I got really excited about entrepreneurship. I think there's a lot of crossover between the passion that athletes have and the passion that you see in entrepreneurs. So I got really excited about that and had the opportunity to start advising companies in the health and human performance space. So I started doing that. I got involved with venture capital investing. And once I graduated, I had the opportunity to work as an investor with a firm called Future Communities Capital, which is based in Northern California. So I love what I'm doing there. I'm able to work with startups at the earliest stages and support their goals in creating change. And I think that one of the great things about the venture capital world is that there are very few, the great things and terrible things is that there are very few women.
Hmm.
I think that only 4% of all dollars that get invested in new businesses go to not female founders, but founding teams with a female on the team. Which when I found out about that statistic, I was just floored. I could not believe that that was the case. So I think it's really a place where there's a lot of impact to be made, investing in diverse founders and diverse companies that are really making a difference. So I'm just getting started with venture capital, but I'm really enjoying it and learning so much. And I think that being able to be what they call like a steward of capital is a place a task, I guess, that I feel like can have a big impact. So I'm excited about the possibilities.
It sounds incredible. So let's say that we have a founder and CEO of a platform that happens to be within that human performance realm. Would it be best to contact you via LinkedIn to just set up an initial call to kind of see how, there could be some alignment there?
Yes, definitely. And you can look up futurecommunities.vc is the firm that I work for now. And also, yes, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And we don't just focus on companies in the human performance space. We look at many different industries. So it's not just pigeonholed into that.
Right. And full disclosure, that's how we connected was the grateful LinkedIn. So you're not blowing smoke. You can really reach out. You are a real human and we will respond in order to, set up that initial networking call. I was just amazed by your entire story. So I figured, hey, network call turning into a podcast episode. So why not bring you on the show? But again, I do thank you for your time. I know you're an extremely busy woman. I know you got a lot going on. So
Thank you so much for having me. I loved having this conversation with you. You're a great interviewer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristin. I appreciate it. Are you ready to optimize? preFORHumans is the evidence-based approach to optimal performance, health, and well-being. The platform collaborates globally with a variety of high-profile performers, corporate executives, elite athletes, first responders, and military personnel. preFORHumans offers private consultation and live webinars designed for individuals, small groups, and large audiences. Visit preFORHumans.com for more information.